The priest's missing bicycle. A small-town priest went to the mayor complaining, "Someone stole my bicycle!" The wise mayor responded, "Fear not. There is an easy way to find it. All you need to do is to read the 10 Commandments in front of the whole congregation next Sunday. When you reach 'Thou shalt not steal,' make a dramatic pause, then look everyone in the eyes. The one avoiding eye contact is surely guilty." The next week they meet again, this time the priest riding his bicycle with a huge grin on his face. "So the plan worked?" asked the mayor. "Well, in a way. I started reading the commandments like you suggested me to do. When I reached 'Thou shalt not commit adultery,' I remembered where I had left it. Today I sat down to rest for 5 minutes. I barely sat down when the phone rings. "Mom, where are you?" "I'm right here sitting." "Good, because Grandma says you fell." "I didn't fall, I sat." "Well, Grandma says you fell like 2 minutes ago." "Yeah, well, Grandma was looking through closed blinds." While I'm trying to explain that I sat and didn't fall, the dog freaks out thinking I'm crying, jumps in my lap, spills my coffee on my pajamas, and my husband runs in yelling, "Who fell?" In the end, everyone was comforting me, and all I wanted was to sit for 5 minutes. Getting older isn't for the weak, and apparently not for sitting either. 3 elderly brothers, 96, 94, and 92, still live together in the old family house. One evening, the 96-year-old runs a bath. He puts one foot in and freezes. "Hey!" he shouts down the stairs. "Was I getting in or out of the tub?" The 94-year-old calls back, "No idea. I'll come check." Halfway up the stairs, he stops and yells, "Wait! Was I going up or coming down?" The youngest, 92, is sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee and shaking his head. "Man, I hope I never get that forgetful," he mutters. He knocks on the table for good luck. Then he stands up, walks to the door, and says, "I'll be right there, as soon as I see who's knocking." Little Johnny sees his mother walk out of the shower and sees her vagina. He asks her what it is, and she embarrassed replies, "Oh, that's Mommy's black sponge." A few days later, Johnny spills a glass of milk on the floor and says, "Mommy, I need your black sponge to mop up the milk." She replies, "I lost it, honey." A couple of days later, he comes running up to her and says, "Mommy, I found your black sponge." Mystified, she says, "Where, honey?" Little Johnny says, "It's over at Mrs. Johnson's house and Daddy's washing his face in it." My doctor said I need to get more exercise, so I shared my daily workout routine. I jump to conclusions, climb the walls, drag my heels, push my luck, make mountains out of molehills, bend over backward, run around in circles, put my foot in my mouth, go over the edge, and beat around the bush. By the time I finish all that, I'm completely worn out. Who has the energy for anything else? A good laugh or even a smile to start the day, it's the best kind of workout. The other day, my daughter sent me yet another email, urging me to put my free time to better use. "Why don't you try something more meaningful with your day?" she suggested. I chuckled and replied, "What's wrong with lounging in the sun with a cold drink? That's plenty meaningful to me." But she wasn't backing down. She told me she was just concerned about my well-being and suggested I try socializing at the local senior center. So I decided to have a little fun with her. Later that evening, I wrote her back and said, "You know, you're right. I joined a new club today, the skydiving club." Her reply was almost instant. "Skydiving? Seriously? At your age?" I couldn't resist. I told her I'd already received my membership card and sent her a photo of it. Seconds later, she called, sounding both confused and worried. "Dad, do you even have your glasses on? That's not a skydiving club card. It says dance club." "Oh dear," I replied, barely able to keep a straight face. "Well, that's a twist. I'm already signed up for 3 dances a week." She fell silent, probably trying to process the shock. After a long pause, she sighed. "You're impossible. and hung up. I spent the rest of the evening chuckling, knowing she'd be telling this story for years. Customer: we bought a computer from you yesterday and it won't turn on. Tech support: press the big button. Customer: I have. Tech support: try the cord at the back. Maybe it's disconnected. Customer: I'll get a flashlight. Don't go away. Tech support: why do you need a flashlight? Customer: it's dark. The power is out. A doctor and a lawyer are chatting at a party, just trying to relax. But every 5 minutes, someone interrupts the doctor. Can you look at this rash? My back's been killing me. Does this mole look weird? After an hour of free checkups, the doctor sighs and asks the lawyer, how do you deal with people asking for free legal advice outside of work? The lawyer smirks. Simple. I give them advice. Then I mail them a bill. The doctor blinks. You're joking. Not even a little. Inspired and mildly vengeful, the doctor decides to try it. The next day, he writes up bills for everyone who bugged him at the party. As he heads to the mailbox to send them off, he finds something already waiting for him. A bill from the lawyer. From Mom. Which milk is the strongest? Little Johnny. The milk from an 18-year-old girl. Mom. Why do you think that? Little Johnny. Because I tried some last night and it made my knees weak. A very elderly couple is celebrating their 75th wedding anniversary with a quiet, elegant dinner. The old man leans in, his voice soft, and says to his wife, Sweetheart, there's something that's always bothered me. You know, our 10th child. He never quite looked like the rest of our children. I've thought about it for years, and it's been on my mind, especially now, after all this time. I want you to know, though, that these 75 years together have been the best of my life. Nothing can take that away. But I have to ask, was he from a different father? The wife looks down, unable to meet his gaze. She pauses, deep in thought, and after a long silence, she finally admits, yes. Yes, he was. The old man, visibly shaken, can hardly believe what he's hearing. The reality of her words stings more than he anticipated. With a tear in his eye, he asks softly, Who? Who was the father? The wife takes a deep breath, her head still lowered, and after what seems like an eternity, she quietly replies, You. A bus full of nuns crashes, and they all arrive at the gates of heaven, where St. Peter is waiting. He sighs, All right, ladies, before you enter, I have to ask, have any of you ever seen a penis? The first nun steps forward and sheepishly says, I saw one once. St. Peter nods. No worries, just rinse your eyes with this holy water. She does, and poof, into heaven she goes. The next nun steps up. Well, I touched one once. St. Peter hands her the holy water. Wash your hands, and you're good. She does, and poof, she's in. Suddenly, a nun from the back pushes her way to the front. Hey, what's the rush? St. Peter asks. She crosses her arms and huffs. I just want to rinse my mouth before Sister Anna sticks her ass in it. Why, little Johnny was late to school. Again. Late again, Johnny? Miss Patterson sighed, arms folded. Johnny just grinned. Ain't my fault this time, ma'am. You gotta blame my daddy. He sleeps in the nude. Miss Patterson, who had taught for decades and heard every excuse under the sun, raised an eyebrow. Still, curiosity won. All right, Johnny. Explain. Well, ma'am, Johnny began, we got a sly old fox out by our chicken coop. Nasty critter's been stealing hens all week. Last night, Daddy heard something out there and jumped out of bed grabbing his shotgun. Now, Daddy don't sleep in nothing, not a stitch. He told us kids to stay put and army crawled his way to the coop like some kind of ninja. Johnny paused for dramatic effect. He aimed his shotgun through the coupe window, waiting real quiet. Then Rip, that's our hound, snuck up behind him, and right as Daddy was getting ready to fire, Johnny leaned in close, eyes wide. Rip stuck his cold nose right where no dog should ever be sticking it. Miss Patterson gasped. Daddy screamed like a banshee, fired both barrels straight into the air, and scared every hen we got clean out of their feathers. So yeah, Johnny finished proudly, we've been chasing down bald chickens since 3 a.m. The guys were all out at deer camp sharing cabins. There was just one problem. No one wanted to room with Carl. Why? Because Carl didn't just snore, he shook the drywall. To be fair, they decided to take turns bunking with him. First night, Steve draws the short straw. Next morning, he stumbles into breakfast with hair like a haystack and eyes like 2 road flares. Dude, what happened to you? I didn't sleep a wink. Carl sounded like a chainsaw fighting a blender. I just sat there and watched him all night. Second night, Mike's turn. He shows up the next morning looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Man, you okay? Carl's snoring rattled my fillings. I gave up and stared at the ceiling till sunrise. Third night, Big Frank steps up, ex-linebacker, doesn't scare easy. They figure he can handle it. The next morning, Frank strolls in, refreshed, hair combed, sipping coffee like he's on vacation. Everyone's jaws drop. Wait, you look great. What happened? Frank grins. Well, when we got into the room, I tucked Carl in, fluffed his pillow, and gave him a little kiss on the forehead. He stayed up all night watching me. Slept like a baby. A young woman sent this message to tech support, clearly as a joke, but the reply she got was pure gold. Her message, Dear Tech Support, last year I upgraded from Boyfriend 5.0 to Husband 1.0 and noticed a serious slowdown. The flower and jewelry apps that worked perfectly under Boyfriend 5.0 are almost non-functional now. Husband 1.0 also uninstalled some great programs like Romance 9.5 and Personal Attention 6.5, replacing them with odd apps like NBA 5.0, NFL 3.0, and Golf Clubs 4.1. Conversation 8.0 no longer runs, and House Cleaning 2.6 just crashes the system. I even tried running Nagging 5.3 to fix things, but no luck. What do I do? Signed, Desperate. The reply, weeks later, Dear Desperate, remember, Boyfriend 5.0 is an entertainment package, while Husband 1.0 is an operating system. Try entering the command. I thought you loved me, Tmel, and download Tears 6.2. Don't forget to install the Guilt 3.0 update. If it works correctly, Husband 1.0 should automatically launch Jewelry 2.0 and Flowers 3.5. Warning, overusing Tears. 6.2 may cause Husband 1.0 to default to Grumpy Silence 2.5, Happy Hour 7.0, or Beer 6.1. Beer 6.1 is especially bad. It downloads Snoring Loudly Beta in the background. Whatever you do, do not install Mother-in-Law 1.0. It runs a virus that will take over all your system resources. Also, don't try reinstalling Boyfriend 5.0. These are unsupported applications and will crash Husband 1.0. In summary, Husband 1.0 is a solid program but has limited memory and learns new apps slowly. Consider purchasing additional software to boost performance. We recommend Cooking 3.0. Good luck. My husband and I pulled up to the McDonald's drive-thru window. I handed the cashier a $5 bill. Our total was $4.25s, so I also gave her a quarter. She said, "You gave me too much money." I replied, "Yes, but that way you can just give me $1 back." She sighed, went to get the manager, who asked me to repeat my request. I did, and he gave me back the 25 cents, saying, "Sorry, we don't do that kind of thing." Then the cashier handed me 75 cents in change. Don't confuse McDonald's employees, folks. We had to get our garage door fixed. The repairman told us the problem was the motor wasn't big enough. I said, "We have the biggest one, a 1/2 horsepower." He shook his head. "No, you need a 1/4 horsepower." I said, "1/2 is bigger than a 1/4. He replied, "No, 4 is bigger than 2. Yeah. We didn't call him again. Living in a semi-rural area, we recently got a new neighbor who called the city council to remove the deer crossing sign. Reason? Too many deer are getting hit by cars. It's not a good crossing spot anymore. You can't fix stupid. My daughter went to a Mexican fast food place and ordered a taco with minimal lettuce. The worker said, "Sorry, we only have iceberg lettuce." At the airport, an employee asked me, "Has anyone put anything in your baggage without your knowledge?" I said, "If it was without my knowledge, how would I know?" He just smiled and said, "That's why we ask." I was crossing the street with a coworker who asked what the beeping pedestrian signal meant. I said, "It helps blind people know when it's safe to cross." She gasped, "What are blind people doing driving?" She's a government employee. When my wife and I picked up our car from the dealership, they said the keys were locked inside. We watched a mechanic trying to unlock the driver's door. I tried the passenger door and it was already unlocked. I said, "It's open." He said, "I know, I already did that side." Stay alert, friends. They walk among us and breed. A couple went out for breakfast and noticed a senior special on the menu. 2 eggs, bacon, hash browns, and toast for just $2.99. "That sounds perfect," the wife said. "But I don't really want the eggs." The waiter replied, "Well, if you skip the eggs, I'll have to charge you $3.49 since it would be a la carte." Surprised, the wife asked, "So, I'll be paying extra just for not taking the eggs?" "Exactly," the waiter confirmed. "Fine, I'll take the special," the wife agreed. The waiter smiled and asked, "How would you like your eggs?" "Raw and in the shell," she said without missing a beat. She took those eggs home, and later that day, she baked a cake. Lesson of the day: don't mess with seniors. They've got tricks up their sleeves. A scruffy little dog got lost and somehow wandered into the jungle. He was sniffing around nervously when he caught the attention of a hungry lion nearby. The lion growled. "What in the wild is that? Looks weird, but probably tasty." The lion crouched low and began creeping toward him, ready to pounce. The dog spotted the lion and froze, but just then, he noticed a pile of old bones beside him and had a flash of genius. He sat down, licked his lips, and shouted loud enough for the lion to hear, "Wow, that lion I had for lunch was delicious. Hope another one comes by soon." The lion stopped dead in his tracks. "Yikes," he muttered. "This mutt eats lions? I'm out of here." But up in the trees, a nosy monkey had been watching the whole thing. He zipped through the branches straight to the lion and spilled the beans. "Psst! That dog was faking it. He saw you and played you like a drum." The lion roared with fury. "Hop on, monkey! We're going back. He won't trick me twice." The two charged back toward the dog. This time, the dog really panicked. But then, another stroke of brilliance. He yelled, pretending to talk to himself. "Where's that monkey? I sent him an hour ago to bring me another lion." The lion skidded to a stop. The monkey jumped off and vanished faster than a banana at snack time. A man had just finished a putt and reached in the hole to get his ball but pulled out a leprechaun. "Sure, and ye have me," cried the leprechaun. "And if you let me go for your tribble, I'll give you 3 wishes." "Thank you," said the man. "I don't really need anything, so I'll pass on the wishes." He let the leprechaun go and went off to finish his game. The leprechaun was dumbfounded. Who had ever heard of such a thing? He sat on a pebble and thought to himself, "Such a man as that deserves 3 wishes. I'll give 'em to him in spite of himself." Now what? Why, money, of course. Everyone wants money. So for his first wish, he wants to be a millionaire. And second, let's make him a great golfer. And let him have a wonderful life. A month went by, and the leprechaun spotted the man playing on the course again. He jumped out of a hole and yelled up to the man, "How you be doing?" The man smiled and said, "Hello, little friend. I be doing just fine." The leprechaun smiled back and said, "And how's your money situation, if you don't mind my asking?" "It's funny you should ask," replied the man. "An uncle of mine passed away and left me a fortune." "Ha! Is that so? And how's your golf game now?" "It's an amazing thing," said the man. "For the past few weeks I can't do worse than 2 under par." "Sure, and that's wonderful." With a sly look, the leprechaun asked, "And how's your life?" The man, obviously embarrassed, looked away and coughed. "Well, it's fine. 2 or 3 times a month." The leprechaun was aghast. 2 or 3 times a month? That's horrible. The man looked up and said, "Actually, it's not bad for a priest in a small parish." Dave wanted a job as a signalman on the railways and was really excited when told to meet the inspector at the signal box for an interview. The inspector asks, "What would you do if you realized that 2 trains were heading for each other on the same track?" Dave says, "I would switch the points for one of the trains." "What if the lever broke?" asked the inspector. "Then I'd dash down out of the signal box," said Dave, "and I'd use the manual lever over there." "What if that had been struck by lightning?" "Then," Dave continues, "I'd run back into the signal box and phone the next signal box." "What if the phone was engaged?" "Well, in that case," persevered Dave, "I'd run down and use the public phone at the level crossing up there." "What if that was vandalized?" "Oh, well, then I'd run into the village and get Trev." This puzzles the inspector, so he asks, "Why would you do that?" "Because," says Dave, "he's always wanted to see a train crash."